I mean, it was big, but I mean, a big breakthrough for us was coming up with the telemetry device and how to control the T-Rex. And in a lot of ways, that big giant T-Rex was easier to control than the Raptors because we ended up building in 1/5 scale this telemetry device that replicated all the joints of the full-size T-Rex. And so in real time, if you moved the head, you had a puppeteer on the head or the tail or the torso, and he's moving that, and it's sending a signal to the through the computer system to the full-size T-Rex, and it's replicating that movement. And so all of that technology was big. I mean, that was Stan ended up hiring a lot of great people: Craig Barr, Tim Nordella, Lloyd Ball.
Park, obviously, we talked about this. You had worked in the past with similar films and similar team and all that. How, aside from being that little factor, what when you first heard about dinosaurs, what was your reaction at the time? Like, because up until then, there hasn't really been a dinosaur film per se, other than if you want to call Godzilla, which was, way back in the 30s and
Yeah,
the 40s.
and what
And it
was that,
came,
Baby or something, that Disney
yeah.
film? Yeah, that
Oh,
was,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
Land Before Time had come out actually 2 years before that, which was Lucas and Spielberg and Don Bluth. But other than that, there hasn't been anything. What was your feeling as an audience member, as an individual, about this whole dinosaur
Well,
thing?
we first heard about it. We were finishing up Terminator 2, which is another classic film. But we heard about that, and Stan told us, that there was a possibility of Jurassic Park. And we were really excited because I would say probably most all of us grew up as dinosaur fans. And one of my first experiences was going to the New York World's Fair, and they had that exhibition where you got in the Ford Mustang convertible or the T-Bird or whatever it was, and they took you back in time. And it was those big animatronic dinosaurs. And I had also gone to the New York City, um, the museum, the Natural History Museum,
Mhm.
and was looking at all the bones and all that as a little kid. But I think that's where our passion for dinosaurs starts, as a little kid, and it's just remarkable that these things walked the earth at one point in time. At least it was to me. And then to hear about this movie Jurassic Park, where they wanted to do dinosaurs for real and make them cool, and it just was very exciting. And we had all been, and I say we, meaning the team at Stan Winston's, we're really into dinosaurs at that time. And there's lots of information coming out. There's a book by Gregory Paul and Robert Backer's findings and books, and Jack Horner, who ended up being on the film as sort of a consultant, not sort of, as the consultant. And so all of these things were sort of gelling and coming out at the same time, and it was really taking a new look at the way a theropod, a T-Rex, or would move, and how they were really built, and the tail didn't drag on the ground like when we were little kids, you growing up to see that. It was a counterbalance. So there was all this information that we were chomping at the bit to incorporate into the design of the dinosaurs.
Right. It's so fascinating. I don't know if you have seen, there's an Apple series called Prehistoric Planet. Actually, it's kind of like a nature series with dinosaurs in it. Like, it's all visual effects.
I think I've seen some of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's one coming on Netflix, which is executive produced by Spielberg with Morgan Freeman. There, I think it's called Life on Our Planet, but it sort of deals with life on our planet from the dinosaur age up until now.
Mm.
Just seeing the types of dinosaurs and the detail and the texture, imagining how they actually shot this entire series, without the dinosaurs, just kind of going out in the
Sure.
wild, obviously storyboarding. The fascination of dinosaurs, I think it sort of faded away in Hollywood for after probably Jurassic Park 3, and then it kind of got back in with the lost Jurassic World.
Yeah.
Do you do you feel that we are going to see, with the interest of dinosaur ever always being there, do you feel that we're going to see another potential Jurassic series in the next 10 to 15 years, or maybe even earlier?
I don't know. I really don't. Um, I think maybe people are a little oversaturated with them now, because how many Jurassic World series did they make? Three, four of them?
I
Yeah.
was too crazy about,
And
but
maybe you have to come up with a completely new concept to get people hooked back in. I mean, the idea of Jurassic Park was genius, that you build this park and you use the DNA and you recreate these dinosaurs. And I mean, that was new. And I think that added to the attraction, that people love dinosaurs. But I think it's the storytelling and the story. Michael Crichton paired up with Steven Spielberg, really delivered something original and new. And then it gave all of us that were involved with the special effects the chance to really shine and to try to bring these things to life. And, with the new technology of CGI, which when we started the film, that was not on the table at all. There wasn't, no, nobody was talking about that. It was going to be regular visual effects. And Phil Tippett and his group were going to do Go Motion Dinosaurs, which is a version of stop motion that had a bit of a blur on it. And the rest was going to be animatronics. And so that was the game plan anyway. And
yeah,
then
no,
very much changed.
I've seen that documentary over and over again, where the part where the stop motion, they even show some of the test footage and how ridiculously terrible it looks. It almost looks like Godzilla from the 30s and the 40s. But I'm just so glad that technology came in. I mean, that just changed everything, right? It just, yeah, obviously that is also connected to T2 and the Abyss, the Liquid Man
It's
or
an
T.
outgrowth of those. I think James Cameron pioneering and striving to create a new arena with effects. He's always been like that, pushing that envelope. And I think,
Is
yeah, it still is. Yeah, he's not going to quit. Uh, and then I think it was a perfect storm with Steve Williams and all the guys that were working for Dennis Muren at the time, and just watching that whole thing take place and explode, and it became the perfect balance, I think, between the animatronic dinosaurs. We're not making these things run and move in the same way that they could, so it was a nice marriage of the two to
right.
cover all of the bases and to get the story across.
Sure, for sure. What was the biggest challenge that you as an individual faced working on Jurassic? I mean, I've seen some of your behind the scenes photos. I don't know if it was Jurassic Park 1, The Lost World, Jurassic Park 3, where you're sort of like a half raptor suit, like the legs.
Yeah, that was in one and two and three.
So you're essentially the raptor in all three films.
Yeah, we figured out that was a neat way to get the legs moving, and you could feature the toes and all of that stuff. Uh, Good organic way of doing it. I'm sorry, what was your original question?
I'm just asking in terms of your challenges
Oh,
that you made.
challenges.
Yeah.
Well, It just was a lot of big, huge dinosaurs, and it was due in about a year, which sounds like a lot of time. But when you think about the size of these things, and we were sort of reinventing things. I mean, we had done the queen alien, which was big. I mean, she's 12, 14 feet tall. T-Rex was 18 feet tall to the top of his nose, and he was a lot longer than that. He was almost 40 feet long. So it's huge. And so at that point in time, the process of digitally milling out the parts and all of that, that wasn't happening on Jurassic Park 1. So we sort of had to build it up old school, you know, where you took the miniature one and you sliced it into sections, and then you took that cross section and you built wood and you built an armature and you scaled it up, you know, the way they built the Statue of Liberty or any other big sculpture back in the day. And we had just probably a ton of clay, you know, that we were putting on, and we had to devise these methodologies of melting the clay and getting it hot so that you could sling it up onto the models really quickly. So you have the T-Rex going on. You've got velociraptors and all their incarnations. There's puppet versions. There's half versions. There's insert versions. There's legs. There's suits. There's, you know, we were using every trick in the book. But you had then the movie schedule, you know, things changed. The sick Triceratops was never supposed to shoot first, and it wasn't supposed to shoot in Hawaii. So then, you know, all hands on deck, you're trying to get that thing done and shipped out. And I would have loved to have gone and been part of that, but I couldn't because I was still there in the studio prepping and finishing velociraptors, which were next up once they got back from Hawaii. I think it's just the scope was the hardest thing, and inventing new technologies. How are we going to move these big dinosaurs? How are we going to mold these dinosaurs? And you're breaking molds down to fit into the ovens. And we bought new ovens, and we had to raise the roof in Stan's shop to make the dinosaur even fit in there. And, you know, you had to calculate where you're going to break the mold so that you can fit and because it was determined that foam rubber would be the most user-friendly and best way to create the skins. I did lots of tests with urethanes and silicones, but they're too heavy, and these things weighed a ton as it was. Literally, I think more than a ton, easily. Trying to think what the T-Rex weighed, maybe 10, 12,000 pounds. I mean, it was.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, it was big, but I mean, the big breakthrough for us was coming up with the telemetry device and how to control the T-Rex. And in a lot of ways, that big giant T-Rex was easier to control than the Raptors, because we ended up building in 1/5 scale this telemetry device that replicated all the joints of the full-size T-Rex. And so in real time, if you moved the head, you had a puppeteer on the head or the tail or the torso, and he's moving that, and it's sending a signal through the computer system to the full-size T-Rex, and it's replicating that movement. And so all of that technology was big. I mean, that was Stan ended up hiring a lot of great people: Craig Barr, Tim Nordella, Lloyd Ball from the theme park industry. And those guys brought their expertise. And something that Stan really wanted to create was, you know, sometimes you'll see things in amusement parks or whatever that kind of, Stan coined a phrase, wagga wagga, you know, where the head is kind of, and when you watch any big animal, when its head turns or moves, it stops on a dime, and there's no wiggling and woggling around. It's just steady, and that's what we needed to replicate. So computer programs were written, and formulas were created to make sure that this stuff could ramp up and down electronically and be able to do just that, stop on a dime and not have all that extra weight. There's the famous story that's been told a million times, so I'll go quick with it. The whole thing with the T-Rex wasn't supposed to go in the water, and the rain was supposed to be in front of it, and yada yada, all that. Long story short, it ends up in the rain. And I get it, because it makes it exciting and it looks great putting it in the rain. But what happened was we weren't prepared for that, because the skin, being foam rubber, is like a giant sponge, and it sucked up a lot of water, and it changed the weight. The weight was the way the program was designed to help control it so it would move properly. And now it weighed, I don't know how much more, because the skin soaked up all the water, and then it caused it to kind of freak out. And so we had teams of people in there at night drying the thing off and putting heaters on it and hair dryers and whatever it took. I went and bought went to REI or one of those camping places and bought all the silicone sealant that they had, and we were brushing it on the skin to help it so the water wouldn't penetrate. But these are all big learning curves.
Yeah.
So, and by the time we got to Jurassic Park 3, we knew it was going to work in the water. So we prepped that. So we knew what was going to happen. And so we made the head, constructed it a little bit different, because that head had to stick it down in the water and do all this. So we were prepared for it. We learned from I wouldn't actually call it a mistake. I'd call it our situation. And the long story short is we got through it. The thing looks amazing in the movie, and I understand why you want it in the rain, because it's just that much more dramatic. And
for sure,
the whole big animatronic foot stepping down in the mud, I mean, that's pretty classic, pretty amazing stuff.
One of the things you mentioned about the movement of the head, there are scenes like when T-Rex kind of goes like this, and the Raptors go like this, they kind of tilt their head back and forth just once or twice. And I was just watching something randomly online, and I came across a video of this rooster, basically with gigantic piece of hair and all that stuff hanging out.
Weird comb.
Yeah, it's kind of going like this. I'm thinking in my head, where have I seen? And it was very prominent movement. It just kind of kept going back and forth. Not that I have never seen that before, but it just kind of struck me that that's exactly how a raptor would move. I've never seen. I'm sure there are other animals and birds out there that do that, but that stood out for me more than anything else. And that's
that was intentional, because we were studying birds and their movement, and we were studying large reptiles and just animals in general, because a big part of what we do, and Stan was always and I've probably said this a million times, but I think it's relevant, is that we create characters, not special effects. And you want them to have personality. You want to remember that T-Rex or that raptor because of that head movement or whatever. It resonates with people, is because they've seen it. They've seen it on a bird. They've seen it on a raptor, as in an eagle or a hawk.
Yeah.
They've seen it on your dog. Will suddenly cock its head when it sees or hears something that's not normal. So we tried to incorporate those kind of things into the characters' movements.
Yeah, no, it's something that we talked about this earlier. It's been 30 years and people are still talking about it. There's a whole new generation of things. I mean, there's Facebook groups, there's Instagram accounts like, dedicated to
Wow.
Jurassic films.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever went on Instagram, and I think there's this one guy that came across this thing during COVID. It's called Jurassic underscore Belgium. He literally has full of Jurassic Park collections, like with
Wow.
miniatures, like gigantic T-Rexes. That's like, he's probably spent over 100, 200K. That's collection alone. It's just a testament, right, to the impact, like a
Yeah.
cultural phenomenon
Yeah.
Jurassic Park has had. Did you, your when you guys were working on it, before you saw the final cut, did you anticipate that it was going to become such a big, just a cultural phenomenon, but at the same time, it changed the film industry forever?
No, I don't think you realize we thought it was going to be a good movie, and we were excited about it. But I think it exceeded everybody's expectations, and it did become a cultural phenomenon. And I remember being in a restaurant or whatever, and you would hear the people at the table next to you talking about, your work or the movie in general. And you can tell it really had seeped into, the culture of probably, I guess, everywhere in the world. If this guy is in Belgium, it wasn't just an American movie. I mean, it made, I think, 933
Yeah.
million. Yeah, just shy of $1 billion, and in merchandising, it crossed $1 billion. So, I mean, it was highly successful. And like we're talking about, that's 30 years ago.
Yeah, and then factor in the inflation, right? That one
Yeah,
billion is equal to God knows what, 3 billion now, maybe even more.
probably. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's yeah, it just changed everything. And you worked with Spielberg on the first two, and then you worked with Joe Johnston on the third one.
Mhm.
Completely different directors. There's no comparison in a good way or a bad way, but they're just different individuals. And Joe has worked a lot with Spielberg on Raiders.
Right.
Obviously, he's done films like Rocketeer, Honey, I Shrunk the Kid. What was working with two of those different brains and geniuses like on the set when you were working with Joe as opposed to Spielberg?
Joe wanted to know everything that transpired in the first two movies. He was receptive to hear the stories, and one of the things that was hard for us is that we spent all this time with paint jobs and whatever, and then like the velociraptors, you can see it in a few shots. They're kind of like leopards. They're yellow and black and brown. But in a lot of the movie, they look gray because the blue light sort of cancels out the yellows. And Joe was very interested in that stuff. He wanted to make sure that we did film tests and whatever, so that because he spent a lot of time, I think, with his art background on with us on what colors things are going to be and that type of thing.
Sure.
And not to say that Stephen wasn't concerned with it, but Joe looked at it, I think, from an artist point of view in that was I think it's also hard for Joe to have to step in after Stephen, created these first two movies, and then you're asked to helm it up. I like Jurassic Park 3. I think it's a good complementary movie to the other two. But
Yeah.
the first one, and it's usually, maybe
Of
with the
course.
exception of Terminator and Terminator 2, I think they hold equal ground. But with Jurassic Park, it's the first one. It's the one that grabbed everybody's attention. It was the groundbreaking film, and then the ones that came after it were in that mold, but the die had been cast definitely on Jurassic One.
Yeah, and the Lost World, Jurassic Park 2 and Jurassic Park 3, they had these certain sequences that were really, really cool. Like the second one, it was the RV sequence, when Julianne Moore falls on the glass and the starts
Totally.
cracking.
Yeah.
And I still
And
remember,
the two T-Rexes coming and attacking them
yes,
is
exactly.
big as well. Yeah.
The moment that really threw me off the seat, I still remember it sitting in the movie theater. That moment when, towards the end, when uh, Julianne Moore is running away from the Raptors, and then she's inside this place, and she's digging, and then she looks outside, and there's nothing there, and all of a sudden the Raptor comes in. Like that moment is like such a, it just throws you off your seat. It's not like scary, but it just you don't
Right.
expect it.
Right.
Then the part three one was the whole. I've always had a hard time pronouncing these dinosaurs. The Pedosauruses, the flying ones.
Oh, they pteranodons. Yeah.
Pteranodon, sorry. That shot when the Pteranodon looks in the camera and it
Hmm.
just turns, amazing. Like some of the sequences in that film was phenomenally done. And also the Raptor stuff in part three.
Yeah. I think it's a good complementary movie to the other two. And yeah, I mean, the first one is just took took the world by storm. That one.
Yeah.
But I think the next two, and they have sequences and they have dinosaurs. I think are well done in all of them. I feel good about it. I feel good
No,
about
you
it.
should.
Yeah.
You should, because again, I mean, I think Spielberg never wanted to do the second Jurassic Park, but because I mean, I'm just theorizing here. I don't know. I'm just telling based on the things that I know. Is because the film became so successful, he was starting a studio, and all those other things kind of factor played in. It still was an entertaining film, So was the third one. I'm a huge fan of Joe Johnston. Like I love Rocketeer. I think it's one of the
Hmm.
best superhero movies, if you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Prejudiced and Shrunk the Kids. But you didn't work on the new Jurassic trilogy, right? Oh,
I worked on Jurassic World,
the first one. Okay.
the first one. Um, Colin Trevorrow wanted to, have some animatronic uh, in the movie, and I think he did in the subsequent ones as well. Some outfit in Great Britain did them, but we did that Apatosaurus sequence when it was dying, and
Right.
yeah, with Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, and I felt like it was a heartfelt scene, and I think it definitely won them over, the two actors too, because it was the first time that they got to actually touch and feel and interact with something, and they realized that we were also reacting to them. Depending on what they would do, we would move it in a certain way. And I thought that sequence turned out well. I was real happy with it. Um, but it's a different set of movies in a way. And we went over and did. There was I don't know if you want to call it a mini movie. It was something Trouble at Big Rock, or I don't remember.
Yes, I've seen it. It's on YouTube. I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, we went and created and worked with ILM in doing an Allosaurus for that, and that was fun. It was the sequence, kind of
Yeah.
like, hey, remember Jurassic Park? Don't forget, we got another movie coming.
I think that was the reason behind it, the marketing.
I think it was totally a marketing thing. But so those were the two after the first three that we were involved in our involvement in both of them. Yeah.
Looking back at this is more of a general question, and I think you mentioned to me last time that you're officially sort of retired.
I am.
Looking at your career, said this last time too, that you've been involved in some of the most iconic and incredible films, at least in my time, in my era. Of course, you're a lot of people's era, like 80s and 90s, especially those 2 decades were like huge in the way the movies pivoted
Yeah.
to a different genre, and a lot of animatronics came in, storytelling, visual effects, and all that. What film comes to mind? And I'm not trying to undermine any other of your project. I understand everything is very close to all of us that we have worked on something
Hmm.
that is ours. What stands out the most, if there was, or top three, for whatever reason, that somebody
I would
asks you?
have to, they all are your children and you work extremely
That's what I
hard
was.
on all of them. But Aliens, Terminator 2, and Jurassic probably really jump forth as seminal moments in my career. And none of them were easy movies to work on either. They were hard. And T2 was extremely hard because I think it was ahead of its time in the way it was written. And there's a lot of effects. We did almost, I think it was 200 different gags or different things for that movie. And there's a lot of things that we did that you probably would just simply do CGI now. But it was at that time when CGI was still in its infancy.
And I feel that the reason you probably picked those three titles, and correct me if I'm wrong, as human beings, when we're going through something really tough, whatever it is, project or life and stuff, it's tough, right? You're like,
Yeah.
okay, when is this going to be over? But when you look back at things in, retrospect, it's because it was difficult to make those three films that makes it more memorable because it was challenging. Is that correct,
Mm-hmm.
as you?
I think it definitely plays a part. I mean, I fondly remember all of my involvement with the Mandalorian series and all of those, the spin-offs and there, but it's all different. Those three movies, I think, really broke a lot of new ground and became important cultural events in movie going history. And yeah, they weren't a cakewalk. They weren't easy. I don't think any of them are, but
Right.
these had overwhelming amounts of things that had to be done. So that does play
Yeah.
a part in
No,
it.
I wasn't in Canada when Aliens came out, but I remember specifically watching previews and Entertainment Tonight and talking about it to friends at school, Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park. I remember it was like those two films was something that, especially T2, I think, more than
Yeah,
Jurassic Park, because I think there was that element of a teenage boy. And a lot of, young guys kind of related to that, plus the futuristic and
yeah.
robots and all that stuff. And there hasn't been a good Terminator movie since Terminator 2. That's at least how I feel, in every aspect. So,
No, I think between T1 and T2, that story was told. And
yeah,
I've been involved with all of them, every single one of them on some level. And the first two are definitely special. Uh, I think the way James Cameron turned the Terminator into a good guy in the second one really, turned it on its head, but in a really clever way. And it's one of the few sequels that I think in a lot of I mean, Aliens is in a way it's a sequel, but it's not.
yeah,
I mean, the first one is like a haunted house movie, the Ridley
yeah,
Scott one, is classic, and then what we did with James Cameron on Aliens, it was kind of a war movie, and each one is different, but I would say Jim has 2 sequels in his pocket that definitely live up to the original.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, Terminator 2. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I gotta see it one of these days. Even first Terminator. I mean, I was reading the scene. I think it was the alleyway scene where there was a fight between. I think it was. Oh yeah, it was when the Terminator actually came in from the future, wherever
Mm.
you guys shot in the alleyway. I read somewhere that there was no official permit to shoot there. Like a lot of stuff that was
On the
pulled off
first
in the,
movie,
yeah, on the first
I have
movie.
a feeling a lot of that was run and gun because
Yeah, it was.
I think that was shot up at the observatory, uh, Griffith Park Observatory, and then when Reese lands and comes in, it was shot in some horrible place in downtown LA.
I think that's the one where it was kind of like a run and go. It's just,
Yeah,
by the time you're done shooting, you're still in the process of getting permission, but obviously you can't pull that off now. I mean, with the names like James Cameron, Spielberg, like,
no,
when you're
no.
starting out, you have to take those initiatives and try to wing it and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think that movie was made for about $6 million the first
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
So everything was done on a budget, and Aliens was not. It sounds like a lot of money, but I think it was made for $19 million, which at the time there were bigger movies being made for 30, 40. And I think part of the reason that they granted that movie to James Cameron, besides that he wrote it and he had a success on his hands with Terminator, was that he was going to figure out how to deliver a big looking film for less money than the studio was used to investing in those kind of big tentpole movies.
yeah. Well, it worked out. I mean, we're still talking about these films, and
Yeah, it sure did.
I really, appreciate your time, taking the time to talk about these films. And it's always insightful to speak to you and learn about new stuff, obviously for the audience as well. So truly appreciate it.
Well, for sure. All right.
Thank you so much, John, for your
Till
time.
next time. All right.
Till next time. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.